We are going to discuss the world of Bitcoin maximalists.
Right.
Why? What was the inspiration to do this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that it's become pretty clear that, people see a future where Bitcoin is very successful, right? By and large, that it seems to be a unanimous opinion in Bitcoin. But when you actually drill people on specifics of what that future entails, you get a varying amount of answers. So, I'd say most of our current messaging as Bitcoiners is about how the current financial system is unsustainable and failing. But what's interesting is we haven't really directed those questions inward, right? So do we have the same confidence about Bitcoin's success into the future? And I think the more that I asked that question, the more that I found that there was divergent opinions, right? So, my argument was really to try to figure out, okay, do we, how confident are we that Bitcoin will continue to work in the future? Obviously, there are questions about its design, right? The people who are the most experts about this subject seem to have the most questions. So this article was really trying to kind of envision, look, there's going to be a post-2140 world where Bitcoin is no longer producing and issuing new Bitcoin. And there are seemingly many opinions about how Bitcoin gets and overcomes that obstacle, or even that it is an obstacle, right? So I think that was just something that, I made the joke earlier that I'm a bit of an anti-confidence merchant. But when I see confidence, it makes me uneasy, right? And I think that current Bitcoiners today have this idea that Bitcoin is inevitable and that it will surely succeed without any real effort on their part, right? And that is very much a sentiment that runs in contrast to my experience with the developers and the people who've been working longest on Bitcoin. And so this piece was a bit of an exploration of why that appears to be the current status quo.
Do you think people are confusing what they want to happen with the potential that it will happen?
I think that people respond to confidence and they easily kind of fall for certain types of stories. So a phrase that I've been workshopping recently is the Fiat Rapture, right? There's a lot of people, I think, at Bitcoin right now who are promising this cataclysmic end to the financial system that currently exists. And they're saying that Bitcoin is some sort of solution to that, right? And what I think what's interesting is I always try to ask an opposite question, if I'm given some piece of information. And that story really maps pretty heavily to a lot of religions, right? So a lot of religions will promise some future afterlife and cataclysm, right? This is the rapture, right? So if you're familiar with Christianity, I'm a Catholic, right? The world, in my worldview, it should be that the world will end imminently and that there'll be some great reset to which I will benefit. Sorry for using that term. That's, politically charged. But I think the fact remains, right, that Bitcoiners are by and large sort of falling into the pattern of propagating this fable that, there needs to be some sort of end to the current system, and then we will somehow prosper from that. And I think that there's a couple problems with that. One, it distracts us from actually asking meaningful questions about Bitcoin and actually moving that system forward. And it creates an environment where people are very complacent about improving that system in a way that it actually can be competitive with the current system. So I find it to be an odd thing that would become so accepting of that story because it requires us to believe very negative things will occur imminently and that somehow we will benefit it. And in other scenarios, we just don't accept that story. So an example of I'm not, I mentioned that I'm Catholic by birth, but I'm not religious, right? I don't currently think that there will be a rapture. And I don't think we need there to be a fiat rapture. I don't think that needs to occur. And I think that those stories can be problematic because ultimately Bitcoin, this is sort of another driving piece, right? Bitcoin is ultimately a consensus system, right? People have to run nodes and they have to accept software and they have to make changes to Bitcoin. They have to preserve the system. So ultimately our thoughts and opinions about Bitcoin actually do matter.